Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Happy to have you guys along for the ride. It's our game picks. Bill, we do this every Thursday. We pick every single Northern game. Last week, that meant picking 27 Northern games plus our G5 game because we have 28 teams that we cover in the North here on Kings of the North, and only 2 of those teams played each other and nobody was off. So we picked 28 games overall. This week, we have 22 Northern games instead of 28, instead of 27. So that's better. And then we still have a Northern. So we're picking 23 instead of 28. Isn't that a little better? It's 5 fewer games that we have to get wrong.
Yeah, it felt a little more manageable because there are fewer games, but also because we actually got to watch teams play. So we have a little knowledge of what's going on here in week 2. So I'm glad that we got all the easy games right when we made picks, and all the ones that required any kind of thought whatsoever, it seems like we got wrong.
I mean, I'll tell you what, 28-0 would not have been a lot to ask last week, and we did not go 28-0. So we are going to pick 23 games here. Last week, I was 24-4, and you were 23-5. And we believed in the wrong Northern teams and didn't believe in the wrong Northern teams. So you and I both got Minnesota, North Carolina wrong because we both picked Minnesota. You and I both got West Virginia, Penn State wrong because we both picked West Virginia. We were the only 2 people in America to do that. We both got Boston College, Florida State wrong because we both picked Florida State. And for that, we should be banished. Bill O'Brien should banish us from the North. Why didn't we believe in Tommy Castellano, man? What's wrong with us?
I believed. I was just afraid to pull the trigger. I did say that there was a way that Boston College could win the game.
I thought it, but I didn't say it. You also got Notre Dame, Texas A&M wrong. You had Texas A&M, and you got Wyoming, Arizona State wrong. You had Wyoming, and that didn't happen, did it?
Wrong's a nice way to put it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then I also got North Dakota State, Colorado wrong because I picked North Dakota State. So I'm a little bit ahead. I'm 1 ahead, 24-4 to 23-5. We're going to do our fantasy picks. What do I do with my dragon? How often have you asked yourself that? What do I do?
Should we hold
him up?
What if we should do a thing where whoever wins fantasy picks that particular week gets to have the dragon for the following week's episode?
Oh yeah, that would be good. And then we can film it, and we can film the dragon drop off. I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, we should do that. We don't live too far apart. We can meet somewhere and
that's a great idea.
Yeah, maybe I'll never win the dragon, and it'll just stay at your house the whole time.
And our wives will be like, "Where are you going?" Be like, "It's the dragon drop off. What are you talking about?"
Swap the dragon.
Oh, I was just being stupid, but it's actually our fantasy and our pick. It's our fantasy trophy because, not to tease anything, I won the fantasy pickoff. At the end of the show, we will each pick 1 Northern quarterback and 1 Northern skill guy. Do dragons fly? They fly. 1 Northern quarterback and 1 Northern skill guy, and I won. Woo! I forgot. I can't remember. What if they just
do
walk?
2 things? They do 2 things. They fly and they breathe fire.
You were just like, "Here comes a dragon," and the dragon was just like, "Coming to get you." And then you could run like moderately fast and outrun the dragon. The dragon would be like, "Come back here." Whoever gave dragon wings was really smart. Whoa, look at my dragon flying all over the place. This is my dragon trophy. The dragon drop off. Is that a good Instagram reel every week? The dragon drop off. We could do it at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, we should do it. Yeah, I like it. We'll meet at the Raising Cane's and we'll do it.
Yeah. All right. I just got to find a place. All right. So I won the dragon this week, but we're going to pick games. The thing we're excited about is that we have 2 big game breakdowns because we have so many big games in the North. We have 5 games where our teams are playing each other, and we're going to do big game breakdowns for Iowa and Iowa State first, and then Colorado and Nebraska second. We're going to pick every other game. We already did a big game breakdown for Michigan, Texas on the Wednesday show. It was a huge Michigan show. If you're looking for that, 30 minutes in the middle of that show, Landis, is just me and you talking ball about Longhorns and Wolverines. We would certainly direct people there.
Yeah, definitely. I thought that was a fun conversation because that's obviously I think it's the biggest game of the week, but it's an interesting spot for Michigan. So I enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was a pretty good breakdown. So yeah, go find that if you didn't listen to it yesterday.
So the 5 games involving Northern teams head to head of our 28 teams. There's 2 I already said, plus Michigan State, Maryland, Kansas, Illinois, and Pitt, Cincinnati. And Pitt, Cincinnati is the game that I will attend on Saturday at noon at Nippert Stadium. Months ago, we hoped that we could take a barge to that game. That did not work out. as this show grows, we will be on boats more often. That certainly is a goal for us. Get on a boat. But we will start with the breakdown of Pitt Cincinnati. These aren't big game breakdowns, Landis, but they still matter, right? So we're giving these three other Northern games a little more juice. We'll go about 5 minutes on each of these. Two good wins for Pitt and Cincinnati last week. Cincinnati, 658 yards of offense. Pitt, 570 yards of offense. The two quarterbacks, Eli Holstein at Pitt was named ACC Rookie of the Week, and Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati was named the Big 12 Newcomer of the Week. So they both are transfers to these programs, man, and they planted their flags in week one of like, watch out. These are two pretty good quarterbacks, man.
Yeah, two pretty good quarterbacks and two offenses that performed in such a way in week one that I like totally rethought this game from what I was thinking coming into the season. I thought this might be like a little bit of a rock fight in Nippert Stadium on Saturday, and now I think it's going to be kind of a shootout because I don't know what to make of either defense. I don't know that either team got enough of a test to have fully formed opinions one way or the other. But like Kent State at times did move the ball a little bit on Pitt, right? Towson at least wasn't shut out against Cincinnati, and both of these offenses were very explosive. So I'm kind of expecting that to continue this week.
One huge part of this game is Dante Corleone, who's one of the best defensive tackles in the North, has been dealing with blood clots since the summer. Had been out when I was at, and this is where I went to camp for both these teams, so I got eyeballs on both Pitt and Cincinnati. When I was at Cincinnati, they were feeling good then about his ability to return. He's been back at practice this week, which first of all is just great news for him. And if things went well this week, he'll play in this game, and that would be a huge boost for the Cincinnati defense. But I think part of what I'm anticipating here is new offensive coordinator Cade Bell at Pitt. They I think know that there might be some bumps along the way. So like they were rolling from the jump with Eli Holstein. And I think there might be a few more bumps this week. One of the things here that's a little bit of a separator for me is Eli Holstein had 3 turnover-worthy plays, according to PFF last week. Brendan Sorsby had none. I do think Pitt got a little bit lucky. They also got unlucky. They had a punt return where the guy got hit and the ball popped out, and Kent State grabbed it out of the air and ran it back for a touchdown. So, but offensively, like they were explosive. They were also, I think, a little loose with it. Yep. And I thought Brendan Sorsby didn't have a ton of rushing yards in that game, but he can move, which I think you knew because you liked him leaving Indiana, going to Cincinnati. I feel like his scrambling could be a little bit of an issue in this game. Sure. I could see him making a couple big plays here and there with his legs. Again, Eli Holstein, 30 of 40 for 336 yards for Pitt. Brendan Sorsby completed 71% of his passes for 383 yards for Cincinnati. I don't have quite the shootout you have, but I do have Cincinnati here. And again, another separator for me is I think Pitt likes its offensive line. You got a transfer in there. They have 2 tackles who played last year. They have Ryan Jacoby back from injury. Pitt likes its offensive line. I think Cincinnati loves its offensive line. All 5 starters back. Luke Kandra, borderline All-American. Another pro at the other guard spot. Veteran center they believe in. A belief that maybe Pitt will make a few more mistakes offensively. Yeah. And that Cincinnati, I think when they need to, with Corey Kiner, Evan Pryor had a good game last week in his debut for them. I think maybe can run the ball a little more effectively. So I have Cincinnati in this game 31-23.
I have Pitt 42-41.
Are you just going to give me, this is a birthday present for me, man. You're giving me an 83-point game between these two teams of the North?
I think it's going to get pretty pointsy. But like I have a 1-score margin, so I can see it going either way because I think you make really good points, especially about Brendan Sorsby's legs. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week, but he wasn't really going crazy running the ball. They were both kind of shorter rushing touchdowns, but that's definitely part of his game that Cincinnati did not get into much last week. I don't think Cincinnati was interested in showing a whole lot against Towson. I think Pitt probably showed a little more of who it wants to be. To that end, like I do think Dante Corleone, like potentially playing this game, is obviously a very huge deal for Cincinnati. I do, even if he's available and able to play, I do find myself wondering how much he might be able to play, given how much time he's had off, and also given the pace that Pitt wants to play at. Pitt was number 2 in the country last week in pace of play. Like they played very fast. And
literally
I think they're
sprinting, offensive linemen sprinting to the line. The whole game looks like a 2-minute drill.
Yeah, which like if you're inefficient can be a real problem, like for yourself. Like if you're going to play that fast, you better be hitting some big plays like they were hitting. So I could see like if Pitt's want to play fast, but then play fast and not score, then I think Cincinnati could potentially win a little more comfortably, like you predicted. But I kind of think the offense is just going to trade blows, and I think maybe I feel a little better about what Pitt has. I don't know. I like what Pitt has around Eli Holstein. Not that Cincinnati's hurting for weapons because they have them too. I think maybe the guy who makes a difference for Pitt is Desmond Reed, the running back who kind of went crazy last week.
He's great.
And like both on offense and on special teams, he's one of the top guys in the country in all-purpose yards coming out of week 1. So I think he's the guy that pushes it over the top for Pitt. But I have a really close back and forth high-scoring game.
And by the way, just another Bill Landis special. 2 tight ends, man. Gavin Bartholomew at Pitt and Joe Royer at Cincinnati. And maybe we don't even need to say that this year. Maybe we don't need to say whenever Northern teams play each other, wow, these 2 teams have great tight ends, because maybe we just assume it. Maybe we should point it out when a team doesn't have a great tight end, because as you laid out in the preseason, and I think more guys have even risen up, there's just tight ends all over the place in the North this year, man. But these are Royer is on the edge of like being a star, because they talked about him all camp and he had a really good game 1. Bartholomew showed a lot last year. Let's put an over-under. Can I give you an over-under of 150 combined receiving yards for Joe Royer and Gavin Bartholomew? Where are you going on that? You going over?
It's a good number. I'll go over. Yeah, I'll go over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll set that line. We'll bet a dragon statue on it.
Love it.
All right. Next game. What do we got? Another big Northern banger.
Yeah, we got Kansas going to Champaign to play at Illinois.
Let's do it.
Teams played last year. Kansas won 34-23 in Lawrence. It was a good day for Jalen Daniels. It was a good day for Devin Neal. 7th all-time meeting between the 2 teams. The series is tied 3-3, so it's a big one. And this is Kansas's first trip to Illinois since 1968, and a big deal, I think, for the Illini. They announced on Tuesday this is the first home sellout since 2016. And they have not sold out a home game against against I think a non-conference opponent since like the 80s, and they're looking to beat a ranked non-conference opponent for the first time since 2011. So there's a lot of, I guess, bad mojo. I guess Illinois could look to right here. I don't know. It's an interesting spot for the Illini. I think maybe that the biggest thing for me coming into this game is Illinois seems to like feel embarrassed by what Andy Koltelnicki, the former Kansas offensive coordinator, was able to do to them last year. New OC now at Kansas with Jeff Grimes, but Aaron Henry, the Illinois defensive coordinator, now in his 2nd year, was talking a lot this week about how that game was sort of a learning moment for him about like opponent specific game planning, and how he thought that Kansas was just kind of like one step ahead of him every time. And I think he wants to right that wrong this week. So I think it could be a potentially pretty, if Illinois is able to win the game, a pretty big day for Illinois defense.
If I had asked you in the preseason what you think, not like setting a line, but just how much you think Kansas would win this game by, what might you have said? If I asked you in August.
Probably 2 to 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. 17, 20, right?
Yeah.
And now here we are, Bill Landis, and you want to go with Brett. You want to. You love Lance Leipold, but you want to go with Brett Bielema and Illinois out of nowhere. Doug, non-believer. I'm a non-believer in the Illini. You want to go with the Caden and Aiden show. You want to do it. You respect Lance Leipold and Devin Neal.
I do.
You picked Jalen Daniels as one of your Heisman guys, but you want to pick Illinois, but you couldn't do it.
I couldn't quite do it, so I gave him a 1-point loss.
So we're very similar. Hey, welcome back to Doug and Bill picking the same score. Right. I'm 31-28 Kansas. In the preseason, I might have picked Kansas 35-6. I just was so out on Illinois. And now I'm waiting for Caden Fagan to run for 222 yards on them. Caden Fagan, Devin Neal, over under 300 combined rushing yards.
Oh, I think I might go over on that too. I do like Kansas wants to run the ball. It's what they do. And Illinois will want to try to keep the ball away from Jalen Daniels, right? So they're going to really milk the clock, I think, and try to run Caden Fagan a lot. And I think they might find some success too. I don't really know what to make it all out of Kansas having played Lindenwood, right? It's just not a game where you're going to learn a whole lot. But I think I did say earlier in the week there were times in that game where it felt like Lindenwood was holding the ball a little bit. And converting some third downs in a way that was like, oh, this doesn't look great. That can certainly just be like week one, whatever. And Kansas's defense will come out ready to rock against Illinois. But Illinois has a pretty good offensive line, as we talked about. Caden Fagan's a good physical running back. Like they'll be perfectly happy, I think, churning this thing out 3-4 yards at a time and keeping the ball away from Jalen Daniels. I just think even if that's successful, I still like Jalen Daniels probably to make one or two more plays than Luke Altmaier is going to make. So Kansas will win.
So your plan on weekends is to be in your house watching a gazillion games, right?
Yeah.
I am waiting to get a call from your wife on Saturday and to have her ask me, do you know where Bill is? And then for her to check on her phone and look on the little app where you can track people. And the Bill Landis dot is in Champaign, Illinois. What do we think? Surprise visit? Surprise Landis visit? And you don't even, here, I'll give you, this is what, you don't even need a credential. You just bring this. Bring a dragon statue. That's your credential. And you put it down right on your seat. And then you say, I'm here on behalf of the North. Oh my God. You want this so bad. This is great. This was not on my list of preseason bangers. This is on my list of they play each other. And now it's, you have a 1-point game. Oh my gosh. The North rising up to the challenge. Oh, are you guys going to watch Ole Miss in Kentucky? Nobody cares. All right. Michigan State, Maryland. This is a Big Ten matchup. This is at Maryland. This is about like a 7 or 8 point game that Maryland is favored. And Friday morning, we'll have our betting show with T-Shoe. This is not a betting show. I think Michigan State's going to win this game. Aiden Childs was 10 of 24 for 114 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks in the opener against Florida Atlantic for Michigan State. I looked at deep passing numbers on PFF. 29.2% of Aiden Childs' passes, 30% of his passes basically, were 20 yards or more in week 1. The only Northern quarterback with a higher percentage of deep balls among all their attempts was Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders was 5 of 8 on passes of 20 yards or more in week 1 for Colorado. Aiden Childs was 0 of 7. They threw the ball down the field constantly, and they never hit it. They didn't hit anything. Billy Edwards for Maryland, your guy, hit everything. But again, coming into the year, who did you think would be a better team, Michigan State or Maryland? And again, I was out on Maryland. I just might be wrong all over the board this year. I thought Michigan State coming in to the season would be a better team.
I thought Michigan State coming into the season would be a better team as well. And then I watched that offense play against FAU and was not impressed.
No. So I am not assuming that our guy Aiden Childs is just not good. I think it was a bad first week. I think everybody's getting used to each other. They had a couple they could have hit on that they just missed on. And I think if they hit a couple of those, they can put some pressure on Maryland, put Billy Edwards in a tough spot where he's not as comfortable. And again, the Maryland defense is good. But I thought it was a bad game by Michigan State. They have 2 real running backs. I just expect a much more efficient, effective Michigan State offense. So I am taking Michigan State as more than a touchdown underdog to win this game. I have Michigan State 27-26. Man, if we're right on these picks, your first 2 picks were 1-point games. Now I'm picking a 1-point game. 3 1-point games in our Northern Showdowns. Let's do it.
It'd be great. I don't know. I just don't have any confidence in Michigan State's offense. And I'm probably, there's two things happening. I'm probably too down on Michigan State based off one game, and I'm probably a little too hot on Maryland based off one game. But I think they kind of have to let Aiden Childs like cut it loose a little bit, let him be a little more of a playmaker, let him run some more. And I just don't know if they're going to put him in those situations. If his legs become a factor, more of a factor than they were in the FAU game, then Michigan State can win this game. But like I think Maryland is better on both sides of the ball. Like I think Maryland's defense is definitely better than Michigan State's, I think, right now.
Yeah.
And I think
Maryland
has more playmakers, or at least known commodity as a playmaker, right? Billy Edwards had a really good game. Like Ty Felton is an explosive play waiting to happen. Roman Hemby's a really good running back. I don't know how good yet Maryland's offensive line is. Maybe Michigan State can control that run game a little bit. And if they can, and turn it into more of a throw game for Billy Edwards, like we have to see if he can actually answer that bell against a defense with more of a pulse than what they faced last week. So I think Maryland wins comfortably. I have it 31-14 just because I don't think Michigan State's offense is ready to put up a kind of number that it needs to win this game. But I will concede that I am probably out over my skis a little bit on Maryland based off one game and one pretty strong performance from Billy Edwards.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. We love Aiden Childs so much in the preseason and plus I understand I like Maryland's weapons too, but Michigan State has Montori Foster. They have Nick Marsh in the preseason. We're talking about the cut below Jeremiah Smith as a true freshman receiver. They have Jack Velling as an experienced tight end. They appear to have 2 running backs now. I do think Michigan State, I just think it was terrible. I think it was a terrible offensive game, but I am not taking it as incredibly indicative of what Michigan State would be. So I'm picking the Spartans to spring an upset that in the preseason I wouldn't have considered an upset. All right, let's get into our first true big game breakdown. This is Cy-Hawk. This is Iowa State, and Bill. I've covered one team my whole life, doing this 2 decades, and when you cover one team, there's great games and there's not great games, but you're all every single thing. So we don't pretend to know every single thing about every single team. We're trying to get there with 28 teams. We're trying to know a lot about everybody. But I'm sitting in my chair, man, and I'm watching Colorado and Nebraska for that big game breakdown, and I'm watching Iowa and Iowa State for that big game breakdown, and I am getting so jacked up for this stuff. For the big game breakdown, that's when we got to dive into some film, man. I'm just watching this stuff, and it's like I cannot wait to see Rocco Becht against this Iowa defense. Aren't you just you're soaking in this stuff, and you're getting the dragon statue vibes. How awesome is this?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's some really exciting, or I guess the potential of a lot of these teams is pretty exciting when you watch how they played in week 1. And I think it's true of both of these teams. I know you look at the Iowa State scoring and think, well, that's not very impressive. It's go back and watch how Rocco Becht played and watch those receivers and tell me it wasn't pretty fun to see what they were doing on offense, right? So I cannot believe we're about to talk about an Iowa State-Iowa game where I think the biggest question is about, or the most intrigue is about their offenses. But I think that's where we are because Iowa State's clearly got some firepower, and Iowa looked pretty good with that new Tim Lester offense.
Yeah. No, so they look terrible. So we'll start with the Iowa offense versus the Iowa State defense. They looked terrible in the first half. I think they might have gotten booed. Cade McNamara in the first half was 8 of 17 for 74 yards. In the second half, he was 13 of 14. In the first half, Iowa gained 127 yards. In the second half, they gained 365. In the first half, Iowa was 3 of 10 on third down and 0 and 1 of fourth down. And the second half, they were 4 of 5 on third down. They completely flipped the script. They threw the ball to Luke Lachey, who, again, Colston Loveland is the best tight end in the North and probably the best tight end in the country. But Luke Lachey wants to be in that conversation. He is absolutely the pivot point of the Iowa offense. 8 targets, 6 catches for 63. Cade McNamara started to find him. And then your guy, what's his first name? Vanderzee? What's his first name?
Reese Vanderzee.
They have a Reese punter and a Reese receiver, and they're both freshmen. Is that right? Is it the punter Reese Dakin?
Reese Dakin, yeah.
Yeah. They should have a peanut butter cup thing. Could they get a NIL with like a Reese's peanut butter cup package?
They're spelled different. They're spelled differently. But
are they both pronounced Reese?
Yeah.
We're can spelling.
Okay.
All right, let's work on that. Let's get those guys a peanut butter cup thing. So Vanderzee, 7 targets, 5 catches for 66. Jacob Gill, the Northwestern transfer, who people in the preseason were thinking like maybe he's going to be the number 1 receiver. 3 targets, 3 catches for 46. And they didn't have Caleb Brown, who probably is their number 1 receiver, who was out for a suspension, who will be back. Addison Estrenga, their other tight end, 3 targets, 3 catches for 25. So they hit 9 completions to the tight ends. Multiple backs. Moten looked good. Caleb Johnson had multiple touchdown runs. Like the offense was terrible at the beginning. They were over 3 on 3rd down. They were throwing short of the sticks on 3rd down. It was like going back in time. And then they figured it out. And so like that part of it, Bill, by the end of the game, do you think Iowa fans, do you think people should people have confidence in the Iowa offense the way they finished?
Yeah, I would. I think a big part of it was getting Caleb Johnson back. He was suspended for the first half of that game. Then he came back. They start to run the ball a little better, run it more explosively, and that kind of opens everything up. So I think when you look at the second half of that game, which was, I don't care who the opponent was, as I said on Monday, far better than anything we've seen from this offense in like 5 years. Factor in, they'll have Caleb Johnson for the whole game. They are getting Caleb Brown back. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about where this offense is going. And again, it's all relative. I don't mean going to be a top 25 offense. I mean going to be an offense that can score maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns for you, which with this defense, I think a lot of the time is going to be enough.
Going to be a competent offense. Yeah. So then Iowa State's defense, just terrible for them. They're terrible. They're bad luck. Yeah. 3 of their top 6 linebackers are out. Caleb Bacon, who's kind of the heart and soul, was hurt on special teams, which I think is driving some Iowa State fans nuts. Why is our best defensive player playing on special teams? But that's one of those things when it works that coaches love to talk about. Our best guys play special teams. When he gets hurt on the 10th play of the game and it's covering a punt, that's hard. So he's out for a while. Will McLaughlin, another one of their linebackers, is out. That's real. And the thing that showed up, this is a comparison. My breakdown is Iowa offense, Iowa State defense. But as a comparison, Iowa State, according to PFF, missed 13 tackles in its opener. Iowa missed 3.
Yeah.
So that's just a comparison. I thought there were a lot of missed tackles, and they had trouble getting off the field at times. 7 of those missed tackles were by the linebackers because they're missing some of their best guys. So against this Iowa running game, I do think that can be an issue. And they just got into this super crazy game in their opener against North Dakota, where North Dakota was just like, they literally had a possession that took up like the entire second quarter. And so it just threw off the analysis of the entire game. But number of plays in that game, North Dakota ran 72. Iowa State ran 48. Time of possession in that game, North Dakota had it for 38 minutes. Iowa State had it for 22. So from a defensive standpoint, they had trouble getting off the field against an FCS team. And I wonder if Iowa State will have trouble getting off the field if Caden McNamara is setting his feet and throwing the ball to tight ends, and they move the pocket a little bit, and they have multiple running backs they believe in. Like, I could see Iowa marching multiple times in this game, maybe not taking up 12 minutes, but I think that's the major concern for me. I mean, Iowa State gets after it. They have a pretty good secondary, right? I mean, they have a couple guys on the defensive line who made plays, but their ability to get off the field on 3rd down without 3 of their best linebackers is a concern, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is for me as well. North Dakota rushed for 174 yards in that game. They outrushed Iowa State in the opener, which I don't think you want to see. But then you question, like, okay, was the rushing success of North Dakota because there are some holes in your run defense if you're Iowa State, or just because the tackling wasn't what it needed to be? And that happens in week 1, and maybe you get that ironed out and you're okay. I don't think Iowa State has a bad defensive line, but now you're talking about, like you said, being down 3 of your top 6 linebackers. I think they're probably going to start a true freshman at least one of the linebacker spots who did not play last week. So it'll be his first game action against Iowa's offense. Like, I don't love that situation, because even if we're like way off base with Iowa's offense finding another gear and perhaps being able to hit an explosive play or two, I think Iowa will be able to hold on to the ball a little bit, right? If they'll Kirk Ferentz has absolutely no problem running the ball, holding it, playing field position kind of thing. And if you can't get off the field on third down in this game, if you're Iowa State, that becomes a problem because you're not giving your offense enough chances to try to go win it for you. So that's probably the biggest deal in this game for me is can Iowa State stop Iowa running the ball in a way that gets the ball back to Iowa State's offense enough?
Now, the other side of that is when they gave up the 20-plus play, 12-minute drive, it ended in a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
So North Dakota wasn't going to hit a big play on anybody, and their quarterback really did a good job of third down conversions. North Dakota was 11 of 20 on third down in that game. Again, that's not Iowa State. Can't let that happen again. But they didn't give up anything big, and so I do think this game is going to wind up being Iowa marching the ball and Iowa State hitting big plays and who does what better. But for Iowa State, if you don't give up anything big and then you make them convert third down after third down after third down, if Iowa converts 3 third downs in a row, but then on 3rd and 6 from the 21-yard line, you stop them, now you're holding them to a field goal try. So I do think that could be part of it too, that I think it's going to be a time of possession game for Iowa, but they're going to have to be super efficient on offense because I think it's like two sides of the same coin. I think Iowa State will force them to convert a bunch of third downs, but also that happened last week and Iowa State gave up a bunch of third down conversions. You know what I mean? So like do you like a shorthand as we break this down, does it feel like it's Iowa State's explosive offense against Iowa's ability to move the ball? And the Iowa defense is a huge part of that. But right when you talk about offense, it's big plays versus efficiency in a matchup like this.
Yeah, it is, but then like Iowa doesn't give up big plays as a defense. Like they just don't.
But meet Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, right? So I mean, like, so let's flip it to your side. Let's get to the Iowa State offense versus the Iowa defense then.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the Iowa defense looked like the Iowa defense last week. Right? It's just like they're very good. They're going to be a top 5 defense in college football this year. So then, can you find enough space if you're Iowa State to hit these big plays? And it's weird. Like I said, like if you just look at the score from Iowa State, you might be like, what the heck happened there? Like go watch them on offense. They were pretty darn explosive, especially throwing the ball. And it started off right away. They scored in 30 seconds to open the game on back-to-back passes. And the thing that did stick out to me watching Iowa State is it felt, and maybe it's just caliber of opponent, I don't know, but it felt to me like they were being more intentional about trying to be more vertical with their passing attack, like really taking shots down the field. Rocco Beck's yards per attempt was 10.3. His average depth of target was 9.7. Last year against Iowa, his yards per attempt was 4.6. And his average depth of target was 7.5. Jalen Noel in week 1 had 7.1 yards per route run. It was, I think, 5th among players who had at least 5 targets, or 4th, among players who had at least 5 targets last week. And Jaden Higgins, his running mate or receiver, wasn't far behind. He was 12th. Like both those guys were getting downfield. Both those guys were making plays. Can you do it against Iowa? I just don't know the answer to that. Iowa is good all over the defense. I think the thing that could help Iowa State is if it can run the ball a little bit, which it did not do against North Dakota. Abu Sama only had 5 carries in that game, and he got hurt. And he came out of the game and did not return, but doesn't sound like that's anything super long term. Iowa State was also playing without a couple of guys on its offensive line who they might get back this week. We don't know that yet. So if Abu Sama, who was not much of a factor last year against Iowa, I think he had 8 carries. He was not at that time the number 1 running back. If he becomes a factor in this game and Iowa State's able to run it a little bit and maybe get Iowa to kind of load the box some, and then you start taking those one-on-ones with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, like then I think you can start seeing some of those big passes. But I actually do think it starts with establishing some kind of rushing production for Iowa State, because if Iowa feels like it could just play with a light box and stop your run game and can divert resources to shutting down your 2 receivers, I'm just not entirely sure what Iowa State's path to a win is then.
Brian Allen, one of the guys, I can't remember what show we talked about him on, the Iowa edge guy, had a sack in that game, but he was a guy that we had eyeballs on sometime in the offseason. But we also in the preseason ranked Iowa State as the 3rd best, maybe the 2nd best group of skill players in the North. And it felt like they opened the game trying to prove us right. Deep shot play action to Jalen Noel in double coverage down the middle of the field for 50.
Yep.
End zone lob to Jaden Higgins for like a 21-yard touchdown. That's the 2 plays you talked about. Then their third play of the game, Abu Sama hurdled a guy for a 16-yard game. And it was the 3 guys that we're talking about, those 3 skill guys, putting out 3 amazing plays the first time they touched the ball. That was like, this is what we're talking about. And then North Dakota State just turtled.
Yeah.
I'm not North Dakota, not North Dakota. North Dakota, to its credit, just grabbed the ball and said, you don't get the ball anymore. So they didn't score that many points. They didn't run that many plays. I thought Rocco Becht was awesome.
He was really good.
Tight window throws all over the field, completely in control. Now, there's no better way to test yourself than against the Iowa defense. But I came away from that thinking this Iowa State offense looks incredible, and the score is incredibly misleading because they barely ran any play the ball for 22 minutes. But they were really effective and as good as Iowa is. And I thought Iowa's defense was almost mean. Didn't they have 2 turnovers in the first 3 drives?
Yeah.
They had a pick, and then Sebastian Castro ripped the ball out and forced a fumble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes Iowa's defense feels mean, like almost like unfair mean. Like, what are we supposed to do against these guys? They're so dominant. But this is going to be an incredible matchup of Rocco Becht and these skill guys against this Iowa defense. But I do think Rocco Becht looks so good. I think he can get a little something done, man.
He's a very different quarterback from when these 2 teams played last year. He is vastly improved. He's probably among every player on both of these rosters who appeared last year. I would probably say he's the most improved player coming back into this game. So yeah, he looked confident. He was definitely ripping throws. They weren't all wide open either. Like you would expect maybe in a matchup like that. We were talking about Brendan Sorsby earlier. It's like a lot of the throws he was making were wide open last week, right? Like that's not what Rocco Becht was doing. He was challenging himself, I think, a little bit to make some tight window throws, and he was delivering. So no, he looked how you wanted him to look. It's just like, can you do it again against it's not even worth comparing the defensive test he's going against this week, right? So it'll be tough, I think.
I think he can, and I'm picking Iowa State.
All right.
My score for this is the Cyclones taking this one. What's the score, Mike? I got to see the graphic. I can't remember what I said. I said 23-20 Iowa State. So we are in the same range here. 23-20 Iowa State for me.
Yeah, I'm 24-21 Iowa. I think I just don't know that Iowa State can quite get enough explosive plays. And I do think Iowa is going to run the ball fairly well and kind of just hold it a little bit and limit those opportunities. But these are high scoring games here for these 2 teams, 24-21 and 23-20. Total in the 40s.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel good about that. I don't think this is so. The over under is 35. I would take the over here pretty confidently because I do think Iowa's offense is substantially more competent, and as good as Iowa's defense is, I think Iowa State's offense is too good to get completely shut down. So we're both picking in the 20s here, and that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I think the total's too low. I think there's too much last year baked into that.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, quick break. When we come back, we're going to start running through a bunch of other games. We're going to start again, like sort of the next tier of games involving Northern teams, and then we will get to our Colorado-Nebraska big game breakdown. We'll do all of that next on Kings of the North. back on Kings of the North. Just want to be so appreciative again to everybody who's here. This has been, it's kind of strange to launch a new show, Bill, without being part of a huge network where you have like an automatic apparatus to push yourself out there. We are doing this on our own with our company. It's just a handful of us doing this thing, and you're never sure how it's going to go. But as we finish week 2 here, we feel really good about where we are. We feel really good about the content we're producing, and we just feel so grateful for the audience, which is growing. And if you guys want to give us a thumbs up, or make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything here, or tell a friend about it. Bill, we could just be staring at each other, meeting at 2:00 in the morning to hand a dragon statue back and forth for nothing.
Yeah.
But instead, some people are here riding with us, and we're so grateful for it.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool. Like I think you and I both understand this is like it's not a radical idea necessarily, but like no one else is really doing what we're trying to do here. It's a little bit of a swing, but yeah, very appreciative of the support thus far, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So if you guys want a breakdown of Texas, Michigan, and go to the Wednesday show to find that. This is a huge game on Fox. We want to acknowledge it here. We both picked Texas in that game. I picked Texas 31-17. Bill, what'd you pick?
28-20 Texas.
Okay. So we both picked the Longhorns, but I think we both think it's a game. You're at an 8-point game. I'm at a 2-score game, but I said I think it's like a 1-score game until late in the third quarter, middle of the fourth quarter, then Texas puts it away. So we think the Wolverines are here to compete. And again, we were wrong on Boston College, man. We are here to be wrong, especially when it comes to maybe not believing in a Northern team, and again in a game that looks like a tough one. So we'll see what the Wolverines can pull off. Another big Northern one. These are 2 Northern teams. One of them's not a Power 5 team, but it's a team that has everybody's attention, Bill. It's Boise State at Oregon.
Yeah, really interesting game, given what Boise State was able to show with this rushing attack last week, and just kind of how flat Oregon looked playing against Idaho. Did you know that Oregon has never beaten Boise State?
Really? All I know is when the guy punched the guy. 0-3.
Yeah. This is the LeGarrette Blunt Bowl. This is so they played
bowl?
3.
It's the Blunt Bowl.
The Blunt Bowl.
Sometimes that's what this kind of looks like, doesn't it? It's like, wait, what is that? That's a dragon statue. Sure, it is.
Yeah, this is this will be the 4th time these teams have played. They had a home and home in 2008 and 2009. That 2009 game was Chip Kelly's first game as the head coach at Oregon. They lost to Boise State. LeGarrette Blunt punched a guy at the end of the game. I think that's what everybody remembers.
And that's Chris Peterson, right? That's Chris Peterson.
Yeah,
at Boise.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly, Chris Peterson, and a post-game punch. What?
Right.
What a moment in college football.
It is. I think everyone remembers it. And they played again in a neutral site game in Vegas in 2017. So the 4th matchup, Oregon looking for its first win, and yeah, they gotta deal with Ashton Jeanty, who I don't know, might be the best player in the country. Boise State running back.
We just really we feel like we got to hold Ashton to under 6 touchdowns. If we can do that, I think Dan Lanning feels good about it. This is big. Like Oregon needs to again, they had a goofy game.
Yeah.
They had a goofy game last week, but coming off a goofy game, this is not a freebie. So what degree of on alert are you at all? We know Oregon moved the ball against Idaho last week. They missed on a couple 4th downs. The score did not reflect really sort of what the game vibe was, but the bottom line was they won by 14 as a 50-point favorite. And now they're playing a team that a bunch of people are picking for the playoff, man. Like, is this any bit of a worrisome spot for Oregon?
I think slightly, but I guess the one thing, if you're Oregon, that you probably feel good about, and granted, they're not comparable tests necessarily, but Oregon only allowed 49 rushing yards last week. Like I actually thought Oregon's defense had a fine day. A couple trick plays got them, but they were pretty stout, I thought, for most of that game. Mateo Uiagalelei, I thought, got after it pretty good. So it'll be a nice test for an Oregon defensive line that I think people were wondering about, like just how good that group might be. But I think they'll be okay. Like I think Ashton Jeanty would have to do again what he did against Georgia Southern or something like that. for Boise to win this game. And last week he had 267 yards on 20 carries, by the way, and 6 touchdowns. So
they gave it to him 47 times. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ashton Jeanty will do what he does. But if they can keep him more around like 150 yards and like 2 touchdowns, then Oregon I think is okay. And I'd imagine the offense is going to look a little more crisp than it looked last week and maybe finish another drive or two. But this is not a like a cupcake kind of game for Oregon. I don't think. Boise's good.
Do you think we will get a pregame speech televised from Dan Lanning where he is saying, Ashton Jeanty thinks he's going to come in here and run for 6 touchdowns on us? Think again. No more than 4. No more than 4. Go Ducks.
Yeah, maybe he could. You're feeling Ducks though. Looking at your score.
No, I think they bounce back.
Yeah.
So like So 49-20 for me. What do you have?
I have 31-21. But I think I'm a little low. I think I probably have another touchdown for Oregon, maybe like a 38-21 kind of thing. And then
I just think it's a goofball game, week 1 goofball game that is not indicative of what Oregon actually is.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And one thing for Oregon that would be a big deal this week, it sounds like they're going to get Matthew Bedford, the transfer from Indiana, back on the offensive line, who's a presumed starter at right guard who didn't play last week. They had some offensive line issues, so if you get him back in there at right guard, I think maybe the offensive line plays a little better. And I noticed this. Tyson Alger, who covers Oregon, had this in one of the stories I was reading. Oregon's offensive line coach this week was walking around with a shirt on that said 2.9 yards per carry against Idaho. So like, they're pretty fixated, I think, on showing that they can move some people this week.
I was hoping that you would say he was walking around with a shirt that said 38.95 degrees latitude, but we haven't made those shirts yet.
We haven't made them yet. Yeah.
You have to watch the first show to understand that reference. What? This is a latitude show? Yeah, it's a latitude show. If you're new and you weren't here for the first live show 2 Mondays ago, it's a latitude show. Georgia Tech at Syracuse. This is a huge one. Syracuse can seize control of the ACC with the win here. Is that where we are?
Yeah.
On this, Syracuse with the win becomes the favorite to win the ACC?
Battle for ACC supremacy here. Yeah.
I don't know when it is, but we may have to go to Syracuse-Boston College if that game is in fact to decide that, for a spot in the ACC championship game.
Yeah,
that's where we are. I'm not here to say that the 3 best teams of the ACC are the 3 Northern teams, but give me another 2 weeks and I'll say it.
Ooh, a lovely Saturday, November 9th trip to Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts for Syracuse, BC.
You want to drive or fly?
You know me, I'm driving.
All right, we'll drive. We'll pick up some people along the way. We'll get a bus. Georgia Tech at Syracuse. Ohio ran the ball 39 times for 255 yards against Syracuse. You noted that on Monday when we talked about it, 6.5 yards per carry. Georgia Tech is averaging 5.9 yards per carry in its first 2 games, running for more than 208 yards a game. Georgia Tech has run the ball 70 times so far and thrown it 46. They are going to come run the ball against Syracuse. I think actually this might be a version of Iowa's. It's a little bit of Iowa State, Iowa. Georgia Tech's going to try to control the ball like Iowa's going to do, and then Syracuse, like Iowa State's going to try to hit big plays with Kyle McCord and Trevor Pena and Oronde Gadsden and Nazeed Haynes, like big play versus efficient. And I don't know, but what am I going to do? Pick a Southern team? What am I, a fraud? What am I, a turncoat? Am I going to come on this show and hold up a dragon statue and say, I'm going to pick the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech? Who would do that? Who would call themselves? Who would put swords in their room and pick Georgia Tech? Can you imagine someone picking Georgia Tech in this game, Landis? It would blow my mind if somebody would do that. I have Syracuse 34-29. Big plays.
Yeah. I'm picking Georgia Tech 24-20 because I don't love the situation with Syracuse's run defense.
Put the sword down.
I don't have a sword.
I got yelled at.
Yeah.
I got yelled at.
Put the sword down.
My wife is here. My wife came home. She was in a foreign country and now she's back. And now I'm on sword timeout.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll put it away.
Yeah. Smart. Good call.
So what was that about run defense? Oh, my sword fell over. Hold on.
Yeah, didn't want your sword to fall and hurt somebody there. I don't think Syracuse will have all that much success trying to stop Georgia Tech's rushing attack, especially without Marlowe Wax, who's going to be out for a while.
Yeah.
He's their best defensive player. Syracuse missed an astronomical amount of tackles against Ohio, and they could definitely clean that up a little bit, but 47 missed tackles, I think it was. And it's combined. It's like on one play, like 3 guys might miss, it's not like they whiffed on 47 separate plays kind of thing. And also like PFF is sometimes wrong with that stuff, but it was a lot of missed tackles. And Ohio, I think forced a lot of missed tackles too. It wasn't just guys whiffing. It was guys kind of running through tackles. And now you're taking out the guy who I think is the most sure tackler on your defense, who kind of holds the whole thing together. I don't love that situation. There is definitely a world where that doesn't matter and Syracuse is just too explosive anyway. But I think Georgia Tech runs it and holds it, and Syracuse just doesn't have enough opportunities to be explosive and win the game. So I have 24-20 Georgia Tech.
That's 6 games, and you and I have different winners in 4 of them.
Good.
So we're really giving people a true understanding of what's happening, because we don't know. All right, BYU at SMU. This is like a sneaky good game, isn't it?
Yeah, and another game that I'm rethinking a little bit after the start to the season. I was very high on SMU coming into the year. I thought they could win the ACC. I suppose that's still possible because the ACC is terrible. But it's more about me thinking a little bit more highly of BYU based off what we saw in week 1, based off what we saw from Jake Retzlaff in that game. This is the first leg of a home and home between these two teams. SMU will go to Provo in 2027. BYU has never lost.
Series.
Yeah, BYU has never lost to SMU. This will be the 5th time they played. BYU is 4-0. And we didn't talk about this. Just like another note going into the game. We didn't mention this. I missed it until I was going back through looking for some stuff. BYU defensive coordinator Jay Hill had a heart attack last week.
Oh yeah, no.
Before the opener.
I didn't want to talk about it. He's 49, I think.
He's 49.
He's okay. He's okay.
He's okay.
Awesome.
And he was there for the game, and then he's going to be back this week and calling the defense again. But it was just it blew my mind that he had left practice on Thursday, had a heart attack, and then was still around on Saturday to help in some capacity. Kalani Sitake called the defense last week. But Jay Hill, I think, will be calling the defense this week, 10 days after having a heart attack.
Modern medicine, man.
Yeah.
Heart attack and come back and coach the game the next week. Best wishes to Jay Hill, man. But that's crazy. So
anyway, back to the ball.
This is a really cool game. And I know you were super high on SMU, but they probably should have lost to Nevada. So BYU's got a shot. You have it close. Did you almost think about pulling the trigger here on BYU, get him over the top?
Yes, I did. SMU looked pretty bad against Nevada, and they played Houston Christian last week. That tells me nothing. Yeah. They're doing some 2 quarterback stuff, I think, still. I guess the one thing is both SMU quarterbacks can run a little bit, and the one thing Southern Illinois was able to do was run its quarterback against BYU. They had 121 quarterback rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and a lot of that was on designed runs. So that's something that BYU has to clean up. And SMU's got weapons, right? They have good running backs, they have good quarterbacks, they have good receivers, a decent offensive line. SMU, I think, is still a good team that's trying to figure some stuff out. But I was pretty impressed with Jake Retzlaff and the way that they threw the ball and how aggressive they were doing it against Southern Illinois. So I kind of think BYU might be able to trade blows a little bit with SMU and keep it close.
All right. I'm SMU 35-20. What are you again?
SMU 31-28.
Okay. Next game is Kansas State at Tulane. 2 years ago, Tulane won this game. 17-10 in 2022. In 2022, Kansas State won the Big 12, and they went 10-4. And their 4 losses were Texas, TCU in the regular season, TCU who eventually played for the national championship, Alabama in a bowl game, and Tulane. So it was one of those losses, one of those years. It also may as well be 1,000 years ago, because Adrian Martinez was the quarterback for Kansas State in that game when he won that job in 2022, then got hurt. Then Will Howard took over. Then Will Howard played last year. Now Avery Johnson's playing. I think that program, I think that's almost all you need to know, that the quarterback then was a Nebraska transfer who kind of was fine at Nebraska, but didn't set the world on fire. And now he's at Kansas State. And now the Kansas State quarterback is like a top 100 national recruit who picked Kansas State and looks like Tarzan. So like they're good. So there's just some weird history here. Again, that was 17-10. Kansas State was 1 of 5 on 4th down in that game, which Chris Kleiman mentioned this week. Like, I think it's stuck in his craw a little bit, but it's a completely new staff. Willie Fritz was the head coach at Tulane then. He's at Houston now. Troy Sumrall is the coach at Tulane now in year 1. He was at Troy last year, and Troy lost to Kansas State 42-13. So they're all, Kansas State's watching Troy film to get ready for this, but they also experienced this firsthand. I just think it's fine. I don't think this is a problem. And I think we see the next evolution. It was, just a nice, easy start, I think, against UT Martin for the Avery Johnson era. I think maybe it's the next step here. I have a pretty big win, maybe a little bit like Kansas State putting people on notice. 42-17, Kansas State for me.
This is a close spread, right? It's like 10 and a half, something like that.
That sounds right.
Pretty close. I think this is like an excellent coaching matchup. I think John Sumrall is a very good coach. Really good defensive-minded coach. Chris Kleiman, we know his bona fides. He's one of the best coaches in college football, I think. I think this is going to be a rock fight. I think this is two teams that want to run the ball and play good defense and aren't really all that concerned with style points of any kind. I don't think Tulane, personnel-wise, is game enough to win that kind of game, but I think they can keep it close.
Okay.
The thing that I think could tip it to be more out of hand for Kansas State is if Kansas State runs Avery Johnson more. He had one designed run last week, probably holding some stuff back. I don't know if you're holding stuff back for Tulane necessarily, but there's more to that rushing attack with Avery Johnson involved than we saw last week. If we see it this week, I think it's a more comfortable win for Kansas State, but I actually think it's going to be pretty close. I have 24-17 Kansas State.
So I'm waiting like just for Kansas State to explode and for everybody, for Stephen A. Smith to start talking about Avery Johnson, right? That's I think that's the line for me. But just like as a reminder, this is tough. Like they get Arizona next week. So this is like, there is a game looming for them. It's not a look ahead. Again, it's one of those weird games next week where it's a non-conference game, even though they're both in the Big 12 now. It's like, these are two interesting back-to-back games, Tulane and Arizona for Kansas State in September. So I'm waiting for, here we go. Mekhi Hughes for Tulane ran for almost 1,300 yards as a freshman. Chris Kleiman noted him. Like, I think he had 60 rushing yards last week, but like, he's a pretty good back. So you might be right, but I just think the Wildcats come out and show what's up.
Yep. I think you probably have a better chance of being right than I do. I just want to see a little more from Avery Johnson and running the ball.
Okay. Baylor, Utah. What do you got?
A game that's probably not as interesting as I thought it might have been coming into the year, if I'm being honest. Like, I think this is a little bit of a lopsided matchup. I did draft this game in our quarterback matchup draft to see Cam Rising up against Daquan Finn, the Toledo transfer at Baylor. But Baylor, I think, is in a little bit of a rough spot. This is a Big 12, two Big 12 teams not playing a conference game. This is a non-conference game, second leg of a home and home that was scheduled before. They were both conference mates, I guess. Utah won 20-13 last year in Waco. They had nothing going on at quarterback in that game. They have a whole lot going on at quarterback now with Cam Rising. So I just think there's too much explosive potential with Utah's offense. Cam Rising was throwing the wide open dudes last week against Southern Utah. I would imagine Baylor will be able to put up a little more of a fight this year with Dave Aranda calling the defense now for Baylor. And Utah has some questions at corner with Keenan Johnson out. So I guess those are two things to monitor, but I don't think Baylor is all that ready for this. So I have Utah winning 35-17.
I have 42-13. I don't know that they're ready either. We want to shout out to Daquan Finn, former Toledo quarterback, Detroit native, son of the North. Wish he was playing in the Big Ten. Instead, he's playing for Baylor. But Baylor's just kind of, I don't want to say falling off a cliff, but they're not who they were a couple of years ago. So I think Utah takes care of business here. All right, let's get to our second big game breakdown. This is Colorado at Nebraska. This is Shedeur Sanders versus Dylan Raiola. This is Deion Sanders versus Matt Rule. And this is going to be awesome, Landis. So let's get to this. Colorado offense versus Nebraska defense. Matt Rule and Tony White, what are they going to do to Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter?
I try to put an umbrella over the thing. I think like try to limit big plays. If I'm Nebraska, I am showing up to this game daring Colorado to run the ball. I'm playing with the lightest box possible and make that rushing attack that did not look really all that improved from last year showed me that's worth paying attention to before I worry about it at all. And I'm diverting all my resources to trying to cover these receivers for Colorado, because Shedeur and the receivers looked like Shedeur and the receivers against North Dakota State. Like that much is true. And Shedeur threw for 393 yards and 2 touchdowns against Nebraska last year. Like they're capable of putting it on anybody if you give them the space to do it. And I don't know that Nebraska has enough to cover all of Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter. And we didn't see a whole lot of LeJontay Wester in the opener either, the transfer receiver who I think is going to be pretty dynamic for them. Nor did we see much of Will Shepherd, who's another transfer who I think is a pretty high level guy. Like there are 4 dudes I think you got to worry about when you're trying to slow down this Colorado passing attack, and that doesn't include Shedeur, who's obviously a very good quarterback. But I think if you are a good defense who can try to control things up front, just kind of playing it straight up and just try to limit the explosive plays and make Colorado try to finish drives, I think that's the recipe for Nebraska. And then I wonder too whether or not Colorado can handle Nebraska up front. Nebraska's got some beef at defensive tackle. And it'll just be a test for this like reworked Colorado offensive line of exactly how much progress they made. Because I don't know that I saw what I wanted to see in that first game against North Dakota State from Colorado's offensive line.
Shedeur's so good.
He's very good.
Isn't he? He's so good.
He's really good.
He really moves in the pocket well, right? I think he's willing to take some shots. Travis Hunter is a problem, but as you up, and again, I wanted to give Colorado credit, and I did on the Monday show or whatever show it was, for sort of like, hey, they found a way to win that game. And it included Travis Hunter being extraordinary. But when you get a step up like this, don't people think Tony White is great, the Nebraska defensive coordinator? Like this is a next level of a coaching staff that is settled in a little bit, and 2 extraordinary individual players. But if they're one-dimensional, and you said if you were Nebraska, you would force Colorado to run. That's what they're going to do, right?
Yeah, I would invite them to run the ball and see if they can do it. Yeah.
So are these 2 first-round draft pick quarterbacks? Do you think that by the time, Dylan Raiola at Nebraska is only a true freshman, but Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Raiola, when they get to the NFL, will they get there by going in the first round of the draft, do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know how many regular season matchups we're going to see between 2 starting quarterbacks who will eventually be first-round picks. I guess we could go through the entire schedule and try to figure that out. But that's why this game is going to be awesome, right? I mean, this is huge.
Carson Beck will play Quinn Ewers and Jackson Arnold will play Nico Iamaleava, but this is the other one that I can think of off the top of my head, right? I'm sure there are a few more, but this is a real big-time quarterback matchup, no doubt.
Yeah, for real. Travis Hunter, by the way, 55 plays on offense last week, 69 on defense, 7 on special teams, 131 total. Mm-hmm. He had, I think, at least 3 games last year where he played more than that. I think he had a 160 snap game last year, which is just ridiculous. So I think that's what will happen, and then it's just a matter of, does it not matter that there is no run game for Colorado? And Nebraska's getting after him, and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter say, okay, we'll deal with that, which is like, that's on the table, right? Shedeur's under pressure. He slides up, he looks, he turns, he's getting pressured does not stop him. So,
I mean, if he's pressured and can move, that's one thing. Like we all know how much he got sacked last year. Like that is if you're actually hitting him, although he takes some licks, man. He keeps getting back up and keeps throwing the ball down the field. So you got to actually sack him. I don't know that merely hitting Shedeur Sanders takes him out of his game. He's just kind of used to it, I think.
Yeah. So on the other side of the ball, Nebraska is going to be able to run and pass. They ran 4 running backs last week, and Matt Rule said they're going to do it again this week. They're going to continue with the 4 backs. Are you going to have to help me with the Johnsons? Help me with the Johnsons. There's an E. Johnson and an R. Johnson. Why did I just write E. Johnson and R. Johnson for the Nebraska running backs? It's
Emmett Johnson and Ramir Johnson.
That's my bad. There's so many players in the North, Bill. Do you know there's like 100 players on each team? And there's 28 teams that we cover, and that's 2,800 teams, 2,800 players. All right. Emmett Johnson, 8 carries for 71 yards. Ramir Johnson, 11 carries for 55, I think it was. Dante Dowdell, 8 carries for 55. And Gabe Urban, 6 carries for 24. Dante Dowdell runs with his hair on fire. He looks like Kareem Hunt to me. He is unbelievable. He wants contact. But he fumbled last week, and then Matt Rule didn't play him again. So you've got to hold on to the ball, which is one of those things you can do when you have 4 running backs. It's like you make one mistake, sorry. But I thought all the running backs, but especially Dowdell, played like they were trying to prove that they should play some more, which might be an advantage to playing 4 running backs. And Matt Rule said also, it's hot. We keep them fresh. They have a couple guys that are maybe more like goal line or third down guys. They have other. But I thought Dante Dowdell, I was like, give him the ball 18 times a game, but maybe he runs like a maniac because he's not getting it 18 times a game. But he jumped off the screen to me.
Yeah, I know he's good. They have a pretty good stable of backs here, and I don't think they're going to get much resistance from Colorado's defense. You mentioned Dante Dowdell fumbling the ball last week. This game last year was all about Nebraska turning the ball over 4 times. If they don't turn the ball over 4 times, they might win last year.
Drop my notes.
And they weren't very good. So if Nebraska doesn't give the ball to Colorado, I think Nebraska wins. Like as simple as that is, because I think they'll be able to run it. I think Dylan Raiola will be able to throw it. Like the one unknown factor for me in this game, I guess, is if Colorado is able to get pressure on Dylan Raiola, whether that's with someone like Deion Hayes or if they just start dialing it up and really coming after him blitz wise. He's a true freshman playing his second game. We don't know entirely how he might handle that. But he's like a pretty big, sturdy guy, and he's tall, and he can see that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that necessarily gets him out of his game. So I just think it's not giving the ball away is your recipe to win this game if you're Nebraska.
Do you take your notes on your computer and read things off a computer, or do you print them out and have them on hard copy?
I read them off my computer.
Yeah. I drop my notes because I like to print them out, and then I have a highlighter. I highlight things.
Oh yeah,
Is that because I'm old? Does it make
no?
If
I had a printer, I think I'd do the same thing. I just don't have a printer.
Oh, our printer is terrible. We scream at our printer makes us cry. It makes us scream. But my wife says that everybody hates their printer, which I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
She said there's a meme that it's something like whoever named the band Rage Against the Machine must have been thinking about a printer.
Oh,
that's a funny meme to me. That's like what a 50-year-old guy thinks about. It's like, oh, my printer. Let me tell you, I'm trying to print off my phone, and then I sometimes have to email my wife so she can print it off her computer because my phone won't find the printer. Anyway, I dropped my notes there for a little bit.
There's like a whole episode of The Office it's about, I think, how crappy their printer is.
Yeah. But the Office Space, the movie, is based on bad printers, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go downstairs and beat my printer to death with my dragon statue. You could get some work done.
That thing actually seems like it's more of a weapon than the swords, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. No, I definitely, if I was trying, if my wife was having an affair and I accidentally in a rage killed the person she was having an affair with, it would be with this dragon statue, right? Not to give away plots of 25-year-old movies, right? Yeah. But the dragon statue could be a weapon. All right, so I think Nebraska's going to win this game. I do think Colorado gave up some stuff against North Dakota State. They got 3 straight third down stops in the middle and late part of that North Dakota State game that they were down 20-14. Here's what it was. Colorado was down 20-14, and then they forced 3 straight punts by North Dakota State to allow themselves to go up 31-14.
Mm-hmm.
So, or to go up 31-20, excuse me. So they scored 17 straight points because their defense got stops. And again, you have to be opportunistic in the moment. Chidozie Wankwa was the guy who really made a difference. He had a run stop on 3rd and 2 where he clogged up a hole. He had a sack on 3rd and 6 for another stop, and then another stop. They on a 3rd and 8, they forced pressure and made the quarterback run out of bounds. So it wasn't a perfect defensive effort, but when they needed it, when the game was at winning time, the defense was good enough in moments. I don't know that it will be good enough overall over time. There are 11 starters last week. There were 5 guys who were back from last year who played a bunch of snaps, and 6 transfers who came in and started on that defense. So again, this is a rebuilt Colorado team. They did have a couple guys who made a difference. And I think Robert Livingston was a good hire at defensive coordinator. I don't know that over the course of 60 minutes, it's enough. And I thought Dylan Raiola played with a lot of maturity. Did you think? Yeah. I just thought he had arm angles. He went through progressions. I thought you could see he did not get rattled. And I think he will be ready for this. And if they can't rattle him, and I don't think they can, I do think Nebraska is going to be able to run the ball. It'll be a better balanced attack. And I have Nebraska winning 31-23.
I have Nebraska winning. I think my score on the screen is wrong. It's actually 38-35. So again, a little bit of a shootout, I think, because I do want to pay proper respect to what Colorado has in its passing attack. But I just think, like I said, I think Nebraska is going to have opportunities to run it and then hit shots down the field. I agree with you that Dylan Raiola looked mature, comfortable, confident, and it's UTEP, right? But I don't know how much more of a step up Colorado is defensively, if I'm being totally honest. I think that Colorado secondary is bad outside of Travis Hunter. And when Travis Hunter is playing every single snap on both sides of the ball, that makes your secondary even that much worse. So I think Dylan Raiola, Isaiah Nair, Jamal Banks are going to be able to throw it on them, and they're going to be able to run it, and they're going to win. Yeah.
Also, Ja'Cory Barney, true freshman from Florida. Keep your eyeballs on him. He had 3 kick returns for 75 yards last week. Gained, I think he had a jet sweep. I think he had another big play that got called back by a penalty, a 25-yard reception or so. That guy is fast. Mm-hmm. So when there's a super fast guy on your screen for Nebraska, that's who it is. This, right, is an old Big 8 rivalry. They scheduled it. They had the game last year, and this year they don't have another series, another home and home scheduled. I think they also played in 18 and 19 or something like that. So they've had 2 home and homes since Nebraska left for the Big Ten. Rick George, the Colorado AD, is interested in playing some more. I hope they do it. This is great. This is exactly who Nebraska and they should be playing each other, just like we want West Virginia and Pitt and Penn State and Cincinnati and teams like that to play each other in the non-conference. I think Colorado and Nebraska should probably play 4 times a decade, 2 home and homes every 10 years. I don't think that's too much to ask.
No, I don't think so. It should be fairly regular, I think, right? There's a lot of history there. I don't want to go away for more than 2 or 3 years at a time.
Yeah. Cameron Silman Craig, who's sort of the leader of the defense, one of their starting safeties, he got hurt 10 plays in last week, but he should be back this week. They're anticipating that. So that would at least help the Colorado defense, but I don't know that they're going to slow down Dylan Raiola. And we have two pretty interesting scores, both Nebraska wins. Okay, That's our second big game breakdown. When we come back, we have 11 more games to get through. These are going to be quicker because it's kind of like northern teams who are huge favorites, but we touch on everybody in the North next on KOTN. All right, we're back on Rapid Fire on Kings of the North again. Thanks for being here. We're so excited. 11 more games, Bill. Western Illinois at Indiana to start.
Yeah. Do you know the last time Western Illinois won a football game?
2005.
No, not quite that bad. October 30th, 2021. 25-game losing streak for Western Illinois. I think that's all I need to know. I have Indiana winning 63-0.
Do you think that Kurt Cignetti will be in a good mood after the game as a result?
I think he will be unhappy again about people leaving, but I think they'll be leaving because they're going to be up by $1 billion in the second half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next one is Duke at Northwestern. This is on Friday night. Northwestern's defense played really well against Miami of Ohio last week. You have 6-3. What's your score?
My score is 15-12, all field goals.
15-12, all field goals, but you have Northwestern winning?
I do have Northwestern winning.
I have Northwestern winning 20-16. Watching highlights of Malik Murphy, the Duke quarterback. He was 26 of 40 for 291, 2 touchdowns and a pick last week. He started 2 or 3 games at Texas last year when Quinn Ewers was hurt.
Yeah.
Watching him when he's on, he looks like an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if he's I'm not sure he's a first rounder, but I'm like middle of the second round on this guy. And then they didn't score a touchdown. Duke didn't against Elon until there was a minute left in the first half. So I'm not watching the full 3-hour cut of Duke Elon. I'm watching the 10-minute highlight cut, but I was watching Malik Murphy make throws and I was like, this guy is unbelievable. And then the score at the bottom was Duke 3, Elon nothing for 28 minutes. And I thought, is the score wrong? I don't understand what's happening. So what you saw with your eyeballs, and I guess he missed some throws, his pick, he sailed a ball on a guy over the middle, right? But there is a lot there. And I know that Northwestern dealt with a super veteran quarterback. Which Gabbert was it? Gabbert, Blake? Blaine? What? Well, I don't mean to be dismissive of the Gabbert. Brett. Is he Blaine's son? Is Brett Gabbert Blaine Gabbert's son?
I think it's his brother.
It's his brother? Yeah. Blaine Gabbert got drafted in the NFL like 10 years ago. Okay, I guess right. That's right. That makes sense. If someone's like 12 years older than you, they're probably not your dad. Okay, so he's a Gabbert brother?
It's his brother, yeah.
It's his brother. Okay, so congratulations.
I like Yo Gabbert.
Yeah. I apologize. I just thought they handled Brett Gabbert last week, and he's a good quarterback. I just think my eyeballs were telling me I don't know if Northwestern can deal with Malik Murphy, and then my scoreboard told me that Elon held them without a touchdown for 28 minutes. So I thought, well, if they could do that, Northwestern could do that. So I do have Northwestern winning, but I'm curious to see if Malik Murphy maybe comes out and has a pretty good game. 2016 for me, 15-12 for you. All right, yep. Akron at that was Duke at Northwestern. Akron at Rutgers for you.
Yeah, Akron lost its quarterback, Ben Finley, against Ohio State. He just got hit in the ribs too many times. So it seems like Taj Bullock is going to start for Akron this game. And I only mention that because Taj Bullock is a Jersey City, St. Peter's prep guy, and he gets to play at home against Rutgers this week. And I think that's kind of cool. Rutgers actually recruited him out of high school. He went to Virginia Tech and then transferred to Akron. Akron's defense for a little bit looked kind of salty against Ohio State. But then Ohio State just kind of figured stuff out and blew their doors off.
Okay.
I could see Akron maybe making this a little closer than we believe early with that defense. Okay. I also think it's possible that they're in a body blow game after playing Ohio State and Rutgers just runs the ball on them. So I have Rutgers winning 31-3, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rutgers isn't quite able to get to that number because Akron does have a pretty good defense for the MAC.
I don't have a lot to say about this game, but it's going to matter to me when you see my fantasy picks in a little bit. It's really going to matter to me. All right. Rhode Island at Minnesota. This is why Minnesota recruited Max Brosmer, because he tears up Rhode Island. So Minnesota and Rhode Island have never played each other. But Max Brosmer, while playing at New Hampshire, played Rhode Island 3 times. I mean, it's like they're in the same conference, the Colonial Athletic Association. His second career start, his first win, he was 12-23 for 184, and New Hampshire beat Rhode Island. The next time he played them, he was 31-43 for 316, and New Hampshire won again. And I guess this was last year. He was 41-60 for 456, and New Hampshire lost. So anyway, he threw for 456 last time he played Rhode Island, but didn't win. Like a lot of talk at Minnesota, just like they know they need to play better offensively. Slow start last week is the thing they focused on. They're talking about Max Brosmer's feet weren't set in the first drive, was a little quick on stuff. Settled in, thought he played better later in the game. I actually don't know. I forgot to check. Is Darius Taylor going to play? I bet on that. Do you know?
I actually didn't check either. I'll look.
You didn't check because it's my game. It's my game to get information for, and I failed to do so. They missed Darius Taylor last week. They still ran the ball okay with Marcus Major, but obviously Darius Taylor, who's been on the show, is an excellent back, and that would help them. I do think they bounce back. Minnesota does to a decent degree. I have 31-12, and I just expect game 2 of Max Brosmer paired with this run game. They always run the ball pretty well. It's a pretty good offensive line. Whether Taylor plays or not, I think much like Michigan State, I thought those were 2 of the worst offensive performances in the North last week. I expect both offenses to take big steps in week 2. So I have Minnesota 31-12.
Yeah, I have Minnesota 38-7. I also thought Max Brosmer looked sped up against UNC. I don't think he'll look that way this week. Darius Taylor's status is still up in the air. PJ Flex said the thing about, like, I'm a head coach. I don't make those decisions. When he gets cleared to play, he'll play, but he's not cleared yet, I guess.
Okay. All right. Bowling Green at Penn State.
Yeah, BG I think is a team to keep an eye on the MAC, but not much of a fight here. I think for Penn State. The last time these teams played was in 1998. Penn State won, and it was Joe Paterno's 300th win. There's a fun fact for you.
Congratulations!
Yeah, congratulations to Joe on his 300th win. I have Penn State 45-7. Maybe the potential for a little bit of an emotional letdown after beating West Virginia, but I mean maybe that makes it a little lower. But I think Penn State is fine. I think Drew Aller continues to play well, and they win quite comfortably.
We are in emotional letdown territory because the next game. So I have Penn State 42-10. What was yours again?
45-7.
45-7. Okay. Another MAC team against a team coming off a big win. It's Northern Illinois at Notre Dame. Northern Illinois beat Western Illinois 54-15 last week. So like a 30-point spread. Northern Illinois does have like a little bit of history of winning some of these games. They have 18 starters back from last year. I saw other people make this comparison. Maybe a decent comparison here is in 2015, Northern Illinois played Ohio State, I think in week 3, when they were the defending national champs. They had beaten Virginia Tech on the road in week 1, and Ohio State only beat Northern Illinois 20-13. So this was a super emotional, huge win for Notre Dame at Texas A&M. I don't think it's going to be 20-13, but I am also on alert for emotional letdown. I have Notre Dame winning 37-14.
I have Notre Dame winning 42-10 because Marcus Freeman's not going to try to play JT Barrett and Cardell Jones.
Huh. You know, we just really wanted to give CJ Carr a look. Like Riley Leonard played well, but we feel like we want to. It's like, oh, just play one quarterback. Just play one. Play one. Good plan. Duquesne at Boston College. Another coming off a huge win.
Another thing coming off a huge win. And I think maybe this is the kind of game like, oh, this could be interesting and get kind of close. Bill O'Brien has talked a lot about wanting to get people coming back to Alumni Stadium and putting a good product on the field and getting people energized about BC football. Obviously, beating Florida State on the road, I think, goes a long way in doing that. But they are going to want to put their best foot forward, I think, in this game, even though it is Duquesne, and beating Duquesne maybe is not all that impressive. But I think Boston College actually plays pretty well in this game. I have them winning 45-10.
Short week, right? You're on alert for that. That actually also referencing Ohio State in 2015. That sort of started their slow start to that year, was playing that ACC Labor Day night game on a Monday. Short week. They come back against Hawaii in week 2. Don't look very good. They actually, I think, yanked Cardale Jones in that game, put in JT Barrett. Then week 3, it's Northern Illinois. They still don't look very good. It can be a tough turn. It can be, especially for a road team. Again, it's another comparison. I agree with you. They want to put on a show, and they're vibing. They're getting recruits, right? They want to have, they want to take advantage of this win. And I do think you could see stuff on Monday night, like Boston College kids being excited, like awesome. Could not be more excited for the Boston College fan base. So they do want to seize the moment here. It's a tough turn, and they had plane problems, and I think had to stay overnight in Florida on Monday night. So they didn't get home till Tuesday morning. Now they're playing Saturday. So it's just a tough turn. So if you're a BC fan, if they don't come out and look like the same team that won at Florida State, it's a very tough turn. All right. 35-6 for me, 45-10 for you. Okay. South Dakota at Wisconsin. This is not like coming off a huge. Wisconsin needs to look better. They had 0 plays of 20 yards or more in their win over Western Michigan last week. Luke Fickell noted that in the news conference. Western Michigan really slowed it down. And the thing Luke Fickell was most concerned with was their red zone efficiency. They had 6 red zone trips, 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals, a 50% touchdown percentage in the red zone is not good. Nope. That's not going to get it done. Like good teams, you're at least over 2/3. You've got to be at least at 2/3. And like the really good teams are like 70-75% touchdowns in the red zone. So he mentioned that particularly about Tyler Van Dyke, just some red zone decision making. In 2021, for instance, Wisconsin was 101st in the country in red zone touchdown percentage at 54%. So like that's how bad this is. It's just one game, 3 touchdowns and 6 trips, but they've got to convert more there. And they need to look better. South Dakota is like a competent team. I think you need Wisconsin, Michigan State, Minnesota are like the Big Ten teams on alert for your offenses need to look more functional. Whereas like Purdue and Illinois and Iowa in the second half, teams like that came out and showed something. Wisconsin has to get it on track because I don't know if you know this. Do you know who they play next week? Wisconsin in week 3? Do you know?
I believe that the Crimson Tide come calling.
The Crimson Tide of Alabama. So like they got to get their stuff together. I have Wisconsin 27-10.
I have Wisconsin 28-13 because I'm not a believer in them having their stuff entirely together. And also South Dakota's pretty good. South Dakota is a good FCS team. Bill Connolly does the thing where he like ranks every single football team division, like FBS through Division 3. I'm pretty sure South Dakota is ranked higher than Western Michigan.
Okay.
Like in his SP plus.
Good luck.
It's good team. Like better. I'm not saying Wisconsin's going to lose, but it's not going to be an easy game. All
right. Speaking of Western Michigan.
Yep. They come to Ohio State this weekend after playing Wisconsin pretty tough last week. I just think it's a game where Ohio State gets some stuff figured out. Like they started slow against Akron and pulled away. I don't think Ohio State starts slow in this game. I think they route Western Michigan. I think to me it's like Ohio State played Toledo, which was a good team in the MAC a couple of years ago at home and beat them 77-21. I think this game might end up having similar vibes. I have Ohio State winning 70-14.
I think Ohio State's going to get it back together again too. I'll go 52-6 and you drop a 70 bomb on us.
Yeah.
Okay. This also matters to my fantasy pick. So we will see how that goes. All right. Eastern Michigan at Washington. Jonah Coleman for Washington, 3 rushing touchdowns last week. That's tied for first in the power conferences because Ashton Genty's not in the power conferences with his 6 rushing touchdowns. Only 2 targets for Jeremiah Hunter last week. Jed Fish was asked about that because they threw the ball to Giles Jackson and Denzel Boston. He said it's just like one of those things. So look for Jeremiah Hunter. I think he's a Cal transfer, a good receiver. They have 3 good receivers to get more involved there. The guy I want to talk about, though, for Washington is Enoch Vamahi, who is a transfer from Ohio State, never really played at Ohio State on the offensive line, is starting at guard for Washington. Asked about that, of like, hey, this guy played pretty well in week 1. Jed Fish did not compare Enoch Vamahi to Joe Burrow, but he mentioned Joe Burrow in the answer.
Okay.
He said if Joe Burrow hadn't left Ohio State and gone to LSU, nobody would have known who he was. And now Enoch Vamahi left Ohio State and is at Washington. According to PFF, he graded out last week as the number 7 guard in the power conferences. He had the highest grade on Washington's offensive line. He played great. So I think everybody had a ton of questions. Washington had one of the best offensive lines in the country last year. Everybody left. They brought in a collection of guys that was not exactly bringing in starters from established dudes. They were bringing in a lot of guys like this who had not played much before. And Enoch Vamahi came out and took advantage of his opportunity, man. So congratulations.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool to see. Like Enoch Vamahi had some opportunities at Ohio State, did not play very well when he was given them. He also had some hard times, I think, at Ohio State. He and his brother, Leaky Vamahi, who plays for Utah, they lost their dad, I think, unexpectedly when he was there. And he's super far from home. They're from Hawaii. He was playing in Columbus, Ohio. So maybe just a little more of a home feel for Enoch. It gets to bring out some better play for him. I hope that's the case because he definitely had talent. He was a really highly rated recruit.
Yeah.
When Ohio State got him. It was a huge deal. Ryan Day flew as the head coach, flew to Hawaii by himself to get Enoch Vamahi.
Yeah.
Didn't work out at Ohio State, but hopefully it can work out at Washington. I have Washington winning comfortably in this game, 38-7. I think the offense takes another step, and I think also when head coaches are asked about specific players. Like he was asked about Jeremiah Hunter. That means Jeremiah Hunter might have 3 touchdowns this week because he'll be intentional about getting on the ball. Yeah,
I would watch that. 31-17 for me. Washington last week started out, turn it over on downs, punt, touchdown, punt. and then they scored 4 straight touchdowns. So like their offense found some footing again. Will Rogers, new quarterback in a new system, but they actually, I think, played pretty well once they got rolling last week. A team that did not play very well last week is West Virginia.
Yeah, I think they have a nice bounce back spot here playing Albany. Albany, again, like a good FCS team. They're 1-0. They're number 13 in the FCS coaches poll. They do have a down transfer from Wisconsin as their starting quarterback, Miles Burkett, who's a former 3-star prospect. So like there's a little bit of talent there, I guess, for Wisconsin's defense to try to deal with. But this feels to me like a spot for Garrett Green, I think, to answer Neil Brown's call for some better play. And I think West Virginia, excuse me, looks pretty good, wins 42-17.
Yeah, I think it's a bounce back to 42-13 for me. And then the last one, this is our group of 5 game. We're going to do a Northern group of 5 game every week. Oregon State at San Diego State. The thing that came out this week, this is the scheduling agreement between the 2 remaining teams in the Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington State, who just got absolutely shafted by everything that happened with realignment in college football. Had a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West this year. I think they paid $14 million to the Mountain West for each of them. They get 6 games against Mountain West teams, and they had until September 1st to agree to another deal for next year, and they didn't. So it doesn't mean it can't happen, but at the moment, Oregon State and Washington State don't exactly know who they're going to play next year. Oregon State has 7 games on the schedule so far. Washington State has 6. If they don't have this scheduling agreement with another conference that gives them like pseudo conference games, I don't know what they're going to do. So I hope the Mountain West and Oregon State and Washington State can work this out. I think long-term, those 2 teams should be in the Mountain West, or everybody in the Mountain West should move into the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want to name it is fine. I think there needs to be a strong, healthy Western Conference in the group of 5 that probably sends a team to the playoff every year. So this is an opportunity here. Oregon State's about a touchdown favorite on the road. They have 2 former quarterbacks starting elsewhere, DJ Uiagalelei at Florida State and Aiden Childs at Michigan State, but they ran the ball last week. Jam Griffin, 20 carries for 160. Yeah. Anthony Hankerson, 24 carries for 155. They're on the same team, Landis, and they currently rank 9th and 12th in the nation in rushing yards. I have Oregon State winning this one 24-16, running the ball again.
Yeah, I have them winning 28-24. San Diego State also wants to run the ball. Marquez Cooper had 223 rushing yards last year. He was one of only 3 running backs to go over 200 yards last week. He's number 2 in the country behind Ashton Jeanty in rushing yards. San Diego State wants to run the ball and play fast. Oregon State wants to run the ball and play incredibly slow. They ran it 58 times and held the ball for 40 minutes last week against Idaho State. I think that style wins out here, and Oregon State wins 28-24.
Look at this, running the ball. 3 of the top 12 rushers in the country in the same game. That's pretty cool. All right. Those are all our picks for the games. I was 1 game better than Landis a week ago. We ended up with, we had disagreed a lot at the beginning, and then if we got to the blowouts in the end, we didn't disagree. I think we have 4 games in the end that we disagree on. So we'll see who comes out on top in those, and who came out on top on our fantasy picks from last week, Landis, where we each pick a Northern quarterback and a Northern skill guy.
Yeah, I was very excited when I first sent these results to our producer, Mike, and then I realized late on Wednesday night that I had done a miscalculation. I had failed to account for the rushing touchdown that Tyler Van Dyke, your pick at quarterback, scored, and that put you over the top. So you are the week 1 winner, barely. You finished. I'm using traditional. I guess I should mention this. I'm using traditional Yahoo, whatever fantasy football scoring. You finished with 20.98 points, and I had 20.8 points. Neither one of us made good picks, but your bad picks are better than my bad picks.
It was, guys were lighting it up all over the place. And a Tyler Van Dyke rushing touchdown gets me over the top. He had 213 total yards for Tyler Van Dyke. Nate Carter, my pick at running back. The other running back at Michigan State had a better game. He had 47 yards and no touchdowns. I cannot believe I won. Who did you pick? What did you do that I somehow won this?
Yeah, I had Curtis Work at Indiana, who had a fine game. He threw for 183 yards and 1 touchdown, but only had 3 rushing yards. Didn't score there. And then Travion Henderson touched the ball a decent amount. He had 65 rushing yards and 18 receiving yards. And it felt like they were really trying to get him a touchdown at one point against Akron, and then they just sort of stopped. So he ended up not scoring. So I thought Travion was going to have like a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown. And they did throw it to him a couple times, but yeah, he couldn't get in the end zone. So not enough.
So we are awful at this, and we have to get better. I'm not even sure I understood the concept last week. So I am done like trying to be strategic, and I'm just going to pick all the best players in the North right now and deal with November in November.
Okay.
So here's who I am picking this week. My Northern quarter, and the rule is you can only pick a guy once. I'm using Will Howard now. We talked about the opportunity that Ohio State has to maybe put a blowout on Western Michigan. So I'm going to take Will Howard. I think you settle in week 1, you go crazy in week 2. And then I'm going with my guy, Kyle Monangai, who I voted for in our KOTN preseason poll in the Big Ten as the preseason offensive player of the year in the Big Ten. He ran for 165 and a touchdown last week. And now going against Akron, I just think Greg Schiano gives the ball to Kyle Monangai a bunch of times again, and he might go for 202 scores.
Yep, I like the picks. I think you're right. I think we just lean into like what is more obvious and then figure it out in the end. I kind of did that. I'm taking Dylan Raiola this week against Colorado. Okay. I think he's going to sling it around against that Colorado defense, couple passing touchdowns, maybe use his legs a little bit. He can move. I think he's more of a move behind the line of scrimmage to throw the ball down the field kind of guy than he is maybe a scramble yardage kind of guy, but maybe we see some of that, especially if Colorado is trying to drop some guys in the coverage and take away the passing attack. Those opportunities might be there. So I like a nice game from Dylan Raiola there. And then I'm taking Desmond Reed, who ran all over Kent State for Pitt last week. And I think he'll be a big part of a pretty explosive offensive attack for Pitt this week against Cincinnati. And he's another guy who, as a running back, can get involved as a ball carrier and a receiver and on special teams. So I like the 3 different opportunities for Desmond Reed to get me some points there this week.
And again, we are playing for the dragon, throne, sword, statue.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do whatever you want with it. You may commit murder with it if you want to. You can try to smoke something out of it. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. If it's your statue for the week, Landis, you can do whatever you see fit. Although if you break it, you have to pay me $60 because it costs $60 at the Dragon Statue store.
That's fair. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for our Thursday Kings of the North, and we will see you guys on Saturday night. Because, Bill, what a slate. I cannot wait to talk about all these games on Saturday night, 11 p.m. live here on our Kings of the North feed. If you're catching this back on a podcast, plan to join us on YouTube Live Saturday night, unless you're asleep. If you like Northern College football, you have 2 options on Saturday. Sleep. I'm a proponent of sleep. I try to get 8.5 now. I have not been getting it. And I know saying 8.5 to you in a world where you have a young child makes you want to pick up this dragon statue and beat me in the head with it, because when's the last time you got 8.5 hours of sleep?
I don't know. I've been pretty good about getting like 7, I think, most nights, though. So I'm pretty happy with
solid
that.
7? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So unless you're asleep, we'll see you live Monday night. And then we'll come back on a live Saturday night, Then we'll come back on Monday, noon, wrap up everything to an even greater extent. And if you want to maybe make a couple bucks or at least have some fun talking about it, Friday morning at 5 a.m., we'll drop our Bets of the North show. Me and Tyler Shoemaker, we make a real $500 bet for charity, and we won it last week. Notre Dame +3. T-Shoe sniffed that one out. My parlay went up in flames, but we have some ideas. We'll try to do it again. We'll drop a couple other best bets. That's Friday morning on the Kings of the North channel. For now, thanks as always to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for making us look good and sound good. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.